welcome to Mind Your Mission, a podcast for Christian women looking for encouragement and staying on course towards what God says is good in His Word. I'm Erin, and I'm really excited that you're joining us today, and we are really excited to have a guest on today's episode. We have Rebecca on the episode. She is a friend of my sister's. If you haven't listened to the episode that we did with my sister Anne, you'll have to go back and listen to that. But Anne met Rebecca originally through work, but now they are just sisters in Christ and doing life together, which is super fun. And it's fun for me to be able to connect with one of Anne's friends as well. So, Rebecca, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I have had the pleasure of hearing your story already, but it is one that is marked with such faithfulness from God, and it's a remarkable healing story. So, Rebecca, would you mind just sharing your story with our audience?
Yes. And I have to say, I am so glad to be friends with your sister because I am old enough to be her mother. So she is like a little sister to me. And part of my story, I am the youngest of 8 girls, and I always wanted a little sister. So I was born in Michigan in the year of 1978, which makes me 46 years old right now. Born to a blended family. My mom was married before and had 3 kids, all girls. My dad was married before and had 2 girls, and then they got married and had 3 more, and I'm the youngest. There's quite a big age gap in my family. My oldest sister is 19 years older than me, and my mom had her first daughter when she was 16 and then had me when she was 32. So that shaped a lot of how I grew up and just life in general. Uh, I grew up in a very great home. My dad was a lawyer. We went to private school. Uh, by all measures of anything, like I lived a very good life. But my mother did never get the chance to really be a kid. And so by the time I was born, she was kind of done parenting. And I had, thankfully, 7 older sisters. Well, I say thankfully now, but at the time I was like, oh my goodness, could I have any more mothers possible? Um, so a lot of mothering people in my life. And a lot of my childhood, I was just kind of left to figure out on my own. And that definitely shaped my identity. And I grew up in a very small town, and I went to a very small private school for most of my life, from preschool through about 10th grade. And that affected me as well. When I was in 11th grade, I decided that I would go to public school. And because I had gone to a private Lutheran high school, I had enough credits to graduate in January of my senior year. So we didn't have running start like what Anne did back in 1996. So I just got to be done and I didn't have to go to school anymore. And the plan was that I was going to go to college and my mom was going to pay for it. And then I was kind of being a punk teenager. And so she didn't want to do that. And through a roundabout chain of events, I went to visit one of my sisters who lived in Florida, and her husband was in the Air Force. And when I got there and we kind of talked about life and my trajectory and plans, he said, why don't you just join the Air Force? Then you can pay for it yourself for school or for whatever you want. And so this sounded like a great idea to 17-year-old Rebecca, who had no idea what the military even was. In Michigan, there is not a big military presence. And where we live in Washington, like you can't go to a grocery store without seeing someone in uniform. So there's just tons of people in the military around here. I thought at the age of 17 that they were going to issue me a Nerf gun and we would go out into like a football field and my job would be war. I don't know if you've seen the Barbie movie, but where Ken says, my job is beach, like I thought my job was war. And so, which is really weird because like Vietnam was before my time and there wasn't a lot of war talk in the world at that time that I was aware of, especially with my sheltered upbringing. But I think I saw the movie like Saving Private Ryan and Braveheart, and so that's just what I thought you did in the military. So, long story short, I went to talk to a recruiter, and told them that I wanted to go down the medical pathway once I figured out that there were more options. And then they talked me into taking this test, which might open up some other doors. So I took a test called the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, and I guess I passed it with flying colors. And then they said, "Oh no, your job is linguist." And so I became a Chinese cryptologic linguist in the United States Air Force at the age of 17. Um, Joined the military, moved away from Michigan. I did tech school in Monterey, California, and then a little bit more tech school in San Angelo, Texas. And I met my husband, who was a Korean linguist in the Air Force. We actually went to basic training at the same time, but I didn't see him at all through that process. And then we went to our same duty station at the same time, and that's where I first got to know him. And while we were at the Defense Language Institute, we were friends for a while and in the kind of the same friend circle. And then I think it was right when we were about to leave, so a year and a half later, we started dating. And then when we were in Texas, we got engaged. We both had orders to go to Korea. And right after we got engaged and right before we were supposed to ship out, they changed my orders to Hawaii and his to Korea. So I was probably the only person in the history of the military from like the dawn of the military to get a duty station of Hawaii and think it was horrible, but that was
Mhm.
only because my husband wasn't there. So we did a whole year apart and got married in the middle, and then thankfully at the end of another 6 months he came to Hawaii and got stationed there. We lived in Hawaii, well, me for 4 years, him for three. And then he is from the beautiful state of Washington. And so we moved here when he got out in 2002. I just did a quick 4 year service commitment and then got out right before our first son was born. And when we moved to Washington, we had another son. My boys are now 24 and 21. So my 21-year-old is the same age as your sister. And I decided when my older son was getting ready for first grade, and I was like, oh my goodness, he's going to be gone all day. Like, what is happening? I had the GI Bill, which back before they now call it the post 9/11 GI Bill. Before that was the Montgomery GI Bill. And you paid in $100 a month for a year, so a total of $1,200. And then you got basically like 4 years of school paid for. So that was, you could only use it within 10 years of separating from the military. And that time was coming up right when my son Mason was getting ready to start first grade and be gone all day. And so I was like, okay, if I don't go now, like I'm
Mhm.
not going to get to use 4 years of tuition being paid for. So I have a lot of nurses in my family, and the sister that is right above me, Jessica, said, "Why don't you become a nurse?" And I had no idea really what that even meant either. And so I did.
Mhm.
And I have now been a nurse for 15 years. Um, my nursing life has taken me through a lot of different places. I've had a lot of jobs as a nurse. One of them, uh, working with your sister at a local urgent care. And um, yeah, that's kind of the down and dirty of it.
Yeah, it's so funny because Anne, when she was on, she shared her story as well, and her story is more cut and dry. I mean, she had her experience with cancer, which
Mhm,
clearly, when you think cancer as a kid, now she's nursing, makes sense.
mhm,
But for me, I feel like it's the same kind of mindset that you had. You said the phrase, "I had no idea what that meant" when it comes to nursing, and then before that, military, you thought it just meant you do war. And I
mhm,
feel like I feel the same way. Like I had to do something. Uh, I knew I should go to college, so might as well go to a college that I don't have to pay for and that gives me a
mhm,
guaranteed job. That's kind of, I guess I wanted to save lives and, serve my country and do all those things. But those,
mhm,
I had no idea. I had no idea what the Coast Guard meant either. I think I learned new things that the Coast Guard does every day, let alone the military. Like, I learn
Uh-huh.
new things that the military does, including Chinese linguist, cryptology, whatever that even
Uh-huh.
means. Like, I learn new things every day. I just find it so funny that sometimes God works in clear, like it's clear what you want to do and you have clear passions, but then other times He just walks you there in a different way where you're still able to look
Hmm.
back and see His faithfulness and see how He got you to where you are, but you didn't really know what He was doing the whole time,
Oh yeah.
but somehow He got there. So I relate to that and just think it's funny that everyone has such a unique story and it's so different. So I would love now if you would dive into, like, once you got into nursing. I know you've worked a lot of different jobs in nursing. Can you tell me about some of those and how the journey has been through that, the craziness of it all? Because I know that some of it has been more traumatic than others. Some of it's been great. If you could just dive into a bit of that, I'd love it.
Yeah. So when my sister suggested becoming a nurse, no one in our family, like growing up, was ever really sick. No one was hospitalized. I mean, I had all sisters and they all had babies in the hospitals, but I don't think because I was young, I don't think I ever got to like, I know I didn't witness their births, but I don't even think I visited them in the hospital. With like so many children, though, I can imagine like my mom trying to arrange that or whatever. Um, and when I was a teenager, I had my tonsils taken out, and that was like an in and out at a surgery center, probably. But again, going back to being sheltered and just not knowing, I knew my dad was a lawyer. I knew he went to work. I got to see his office. But aside from that, like, I don't know. I watched Saturday morning cartoons and went to school. Like, that was it. I did dance too a lot. We were in competitive dance a lot. Um, so I became a nurse, and in nursing school, I remember even just thinking, like, we would learn a respiratory assessment, and like, you're supposed to put your stethoscope here and listen for this, and all of these rules and how you did things. And then I was like, but when would I do a respiratory assessment? And it was like, oh, well, when someone's struggling to breathe,
Mhm.
or, they've been sick with like pneumonia, or they have COPD, but not ever seeing those things, especially in the beginning of nursing school, like reading about it in a book was just like, what is this? And then you
Mhm.
get into clinicals and you see those things, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, that person clearly can't breathe. Someone should listen to their lungs.
Mhm.
So that was kind of my entryway, I guess. I also remember just not even knowing or realizing, I guess, because I was never in the hospital. Um, some people might be like, where did this girl grow up? Like under a rock? Yes, I did. Um, but I remember going to get my first nursing job and being like, what? The emergency room is open on like Christmas and nights and weekends? Like, we don't close for this? And just never having that realization because it just wasn't a part of my world.
Mhm.
And even in the military, I did so much of my career was technical school that we got 2 weeks off at Christmas. Like
Mhm.
the military isn't,
Right.
like we're shutting
Yeah.
down. It's Christmas, everyone. So, and also just being very young. But my first job as a nurse was at a level 2 trauma center in Tacoma, Washington. And I had never witnessed all of the things that I witnessed while I was there. Um, it was very, very shocking, both just like the patients and the traumas and the amount of things that I saw, but also the staff. I think to deal with that kind of thing day in and day out, you really do have to build up something on the outside, like a tough exterior to shelter and guard your heart so that you can see all of that stuff and not have it affect you to your core. So it's people in the emergency room are generally noted as having a little bit of a tougher exterior. And there's a phrase in nursing, nurses eat their young. And I'm not sure if your sister or like the new generation of nurses experience that, but I was eaten alive in that place. And at that time, I was, I think, like 28 and just wanted everyone to like me and wanted everyone to be pleased with everything. And I would walk into work and they would say things like, oh, so and so is saying you're stupid. And I was like, oh, well, I'm a brand new nurse. What did I do? Tell me so I don't do it again. And they'd say, "Oh, you didn't do anything. You just haven't shown us that you're not stupid." And so going in like day after day after day in that kind of environment and then having all the stressful circumstances um, was really rough. Also, I had a preceptor who trained me. So in nursing, typically you go to school for however many years. I went to a community college, so I did 2 years of prerequisites and then 2 years of full time nursing classes. And I got my associates in nursing. And then later I went back and got my bachelor's degree in nursing. And now I am about to start grad school, um, also in nursing. So at that time, my mom had also come to live with us. She was going to help with our childcare because my husband is a law enforcement officer now. And shocking fact, they also have to work nights, weekends, and holidays.
Really?
There's no vacation for them either. So we were sitting here with young children trying to figure out who would watch our kids at like 2 a.m. on Christmas. And that was a little tricky. So my mom came to live with us. So that was like hardship number one. Hardship number two, day in and day out of just constant trauma, emergencies, all of that stuff. And then my schedule, I didn't really get to pick it at the time. And so I worked 3 p.m. to 3:30 a.m. and it was 3 shifts in a row. So I ended up because of my schedule and my kids' schedule, I didn't see my kids for like 4 days a week
Mm,
because by
mhm.
the time I left, they were already in school. And then I'd get home and they'd be in bed and then I'd sleep and they'd go back to school and it just continued on. But um, typically, what they do when you become a new nurse is you go through residency. So you do your schooling, you get your degree, you take an NCLEX exam, which licenses you in your state to become a nurse. And then your first job, especially, you do like a 6 month residency where you kind of take classes at the hospital and you also have a preceptor or two who shows you around day in and day out and watches you do everything first with like a ton of supervision. And then by the end of that, you're kind of almost flying solo, but they're sitting there in case you have questions. So one of my preceptors would tell me things like, "You have not earned the right to talk." And I was just like, "What?" Like, I can't speak.
Mhm.
So every time I was with her, I was so afraid of doing something that would make me look even more stupid because they were already saying that I was stupid. And I wanted her to like me. I wanted everyone else to like me. And it was just super stressful in life at home with my mom living with us and then with all the things at work. Um, so that really, really was a horrible experience. And lots of other bad things happened during that time and lots of other bad patient situations. But I think it was like my fourth solo shift when I finished my residency. I had a patient that died, and I did not even understand like what was happening as things were happening. And I'm like looking at people, and I remember the doctor asking if he had a seizure. And I was like, I don't even know what that looks like. Like, I've never seen that.
Mhm.
So just things like that day in and day out were hard. But also that just like you're not good enough or you're dumb, we don't like you because of whatever reason,
Well, and if you can't
was
speak
hard.
and can't ask questions,
Yeah,
then that's
yes. And the way that that has shaped me now, if I ever train someone, is
Mhm.
I tell people like, A, you are not stupid. You made it through nursing school. And especially with the competitive nature of getting into nursing school because there's not enough teachers and not enough spots for students. Anyone that makes it through, you are not stupid. You are inexperienced. And there is a very big difference. In the same way that you can be a nurse for 30 years in maybe emergency nursing, and then you're like, you know what? I want to do mom baby. Well, guess what? You're not stupid, but you're inexperienced in that, and you're going to learn a whole lot.
Mhm.
So I take that with me, and I always tell newer nurses or
Mm.
nurses who are training with me that there is no stupid question. Like, I would so much rather, for the patient's sake and for your sake, just ask me if you have any questions or anything that I can help you with. And that sometimes we do something and you don't do it again for 4 months, 6 months. And so it's like, oh yeah, what do we do in this situation? Like, just ask.
Hmm.
We are a great force. We can support each other
Hmm.
instead of tearing each other down.
Yeah.
So that negativity like really just instilled in my head in the start of a career, like you are dumb and
Yeah.
you will never amount to anything. So I left that environment once my residency contract was over because I was like, I cannot deal with this stress and not seeing my kids and this horrible schedule. And this is not really what I want to do. And then from there, I would do a job. I would show up and they'd say, oh, you've already done a residency. So we can just do like an onboarding and different things would happen that would get cut short
Mm.
because I was a fast learner. And then I would get to a point where I'd be on my own and then I'd have a question and I didn't feel like I had that person to go to. And so all of those things that I had been told from the start of my career of like, you're stupid, you can't do this, you're doing it wrong, whatever, you can't talk, was just like, oh, they think I'm smart, but if I ask this or if I do this,
Hmm.
like they're going to find out who I really am. And so sometimes, not just if I had one question, but sometimes that would get to a point where I was like, oh, yeah, I don't feel like I know what I'm doing here. And clearly, this isn't the place for me.
Mm.
And then other times it was like my husband's schedule changed or my kids' needs changed. And so I would work a per diem job, which kind of just means like you can fill in the holes that are needed. And per diem nursing is kind of feast or famine. They either want you to work every day, all day, or they don't have any shifts for you to work. So then I'd pick up another job at the same time, and then that wouldn't work, and it would be too hard to juggle two workplaces. And so that went on. So in my almost 15 years of nursing, I have worked in several emergency rooms. I have worked in the PACU or post anesthesia care unit recovery room where you wake up after surgery. I have done a lot of infusion, both at infusion clinics where patients come to get IV medications. I've also done that at a med spa and a naturopathic office. What else have I done? I did med surge. I did oncology for a minute because I identify with Anne's story a lot because my mom had leukemia, and leukemia is also a blood cancer. And so I was like, oh, this must be my calling and this is where I'm supposed to go. And so I worked in oncology for a minute and I was like, nope, this is not what I was called to.
Mhm.
Um, so my nursing career's kind of taken me all over the place. And right now I work at a private practice and we specialize in something called direct primary care and metabolic health. And this is like a place where I'm like, oh yeah, this is where I was supposed to be since I became a nurse. So a roundabout way to get there, but I
Yeah.
got there.
Yeah. I feel like what you were saying with, like, when you reflect on how you teach people now or would teach people now,
Mhm.
saying you're not stupid, but just inexperienced. I feel like that, if we just pause podcast, like, that is like a huge lesson
Drop the mic.
for everybody in any. I was like thinking as you were talking about it, I'm like, okay, felt that in the military. Okay, have felt that as a mom, like all of it, like, because I always feel like you're riding that fine line between, like, I don't want to be cocky, but I do know a lot
Mhm.
coming from an academy. Like, I knew a lot going into my first job, but I also had the book knowledge, but not the experience. But people treated me like I was stupid, but I wasn't. But I also didn't.
Mhm.
I didn't have the backup 20 years to bank on. So that is. I don't know. It's so simple. You're not stupid. You're just inexperienced. It makes my shoulders like, oh, yeah, I'm not stupid. I just haven't walked through this for years and years, and I don't have real life experiences that have given me confidence. So,
Mhm.
anyway, I just thought that we had to pause and like recap
Yes.
that because
Well,
that's super
and
powerful.
your sister just came to job shadow me the other day, and she sat there for a minute and she was just listening to me talking to patients, talking to the doctor, doing all the things. And she said, oh my gosh, you're so smart. She's like, how do you know all of this? And I looked at her and I said, you are also so smart.
Hmm.
And you are like a baby nurse. Like, you don't even know how to walk yet. And you are flying. I was like, you
Yeah.
are amazing. So, I told her I have been interested in nutrition and like the natural side of healing since as long as I can remember. For sure, when my 21-year-old was like 8 years old, I started doing a lot of research into that. And then I told her, I was like, I get to sit here and listen to the doctor talk to all these patients every day. And so I get to like pick up and learn more and more and more every day. And this is also my passion. So where
Mhm.
your passion meets learning, it's like, oh, just like fire hose, blast it at me because I can't learn enough of this.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is great too.
Well, and sometimes I think I get impatient sometimes.
Oh,
Again,
yeah.
this isn't like in a lot of different places in my life, but I get impatient because you can't force the experience. Like, you have to
Hmm.
just let time go by, and I wanna just know everything in experience. I wanna know every single case, search and rescue case that could possibly happen because I wanna be prepared, but it's like, that only comes with time. Like, you don't want a billion
Hmm.
things to happen at once when it comes to search and
Right.
rescue. So,
Yes.
like, you just have
You
to
want nothing to happen.
right. So, I don't know, it comes with time, and we just have to be patient, and I hate the phrase I hate when you're in a spot where someone's telling you trust the process because it just seems like, ugh, whatever. But sometimes you just have to trust the process, and that's what I in motherhood tell all my friends who are just now having babies. Like, my best piece of advice is take it as it comes, because every day is
Hmm.
different and you're learning something new about your baby every day, and the answer for one person is so different than the answer for another.
Hmm.
And so take it as it comes, trust the process. Like,
Do
they're
you know where this
cliches, but
hit home so much? So I have wanted to learn how to play the drums forever, and I don't think I have very good rhythm. Both of my boys play the drums, the guitar, and the piano.
wow.
So I think it skipped like a generation or something. But anyways, when my son Mason, who's now 24, when he got his permit and I was watching him drive, I was like, oh, this is like learning at its finest. Like, I had been driving at that point for so long that my state patrol husband would not agree with this, but I could probably talk on my cell phone, eat a cheeseburger, and put mascara on all while I'm driving. I don't do that, but like it just, I don't really think about it a lot. I just get in the car, I do it, and it happens. But watching him like not even be able to figure out the pressure of like, do I push the gas pedal or not? Do I go, stop, go? And we were like, Mason, push it a little harder. Okay, keep going. But then also like, how do I stay in the lines? How do I not hit the trash cans?
Hmm.
And realizing the painful process that learning something new is,
Hmm.
that if it's something that you don't want to learn or you don't want in part of your life, like Anne kind of was saying about classes in high school, that she was like, I want to be a nurse. I don't need to know
Yeah.
this.
Hmm.
Um, it's harder to learn if you don't have that passion. But man, when you have a passion for learning whatever it is, underwater basket weaving, doesn't matter. You will just be like, yes, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, trust the process.
Yeah, I'm glad we paused there and really hit that point home, because
Hmm.
it's important for everybody in any walk of life. So now that you're settled in this job, we kind of walked there throughout your story. Can you talk about your own health a little bit throughout all this? I mean, we've talked about the craziness of feeling stupid, feeling like you're not worthy of being in a workplace, and I imagine that would take a toll on your mental health,
Hmm.
physically too. I know, just working a crazy shift schedule that I'm on right now, like, I'm tired, and that's like,
Hmm.
I don't feel as healthy physically as I have before. And so can you just walk us through your own health journey?
Yeah. So, growing up, I knew nothing about health, wellness, illness, proper nutrition. My mom never cooked, and
Hmm.
so we ate fast food like almost every day.
Wow.
And then we would go to dance class. So school, drive through, dance class. And it was like a good home meal if we got Kentucky Fried Chicken, because then you got like the bucket of chicken brought
Hmm.
home and we might sit at a table together.
Hmm.
But we did on holidays, she would cook. But aside from that, everything came out of a box,
Right.
mac and cheese or TV dinners or whatever. When I became a nurse, well, first when I joined the military and I was in Monterey, California, I went to the first farmer's market I'd ever been to.
Hmm.
And I was like, whoa, like, what do you mean you grew this fruit or vegetable or raised this meat. I thought it just came from the store. And so your listeners are going to think I'm super intelligent, but I was very sheltered. Parented on my own, kind of like Mowgli from the Jungle Book. Like I was just raised. But I started learning things about nutrition then and started piquing my interest. And then when I became a nurse and was in the hospital, and I thought, I want to help people and I want to work in healthcare. And then very quickly learned that, like, oh, this is sick care. This is
Mhm.
not health care.
Yeah.
That kind of rocked my world a little bit. But I remember just even seeing someone who was withdrawing from alcohol,
Mhm.
and they were an older patient who definitely drank every single day, fell and broke their arm because of said drinking. And then that was kind of like a wake up call and just quit drinking cold
Mhm.
turkey. And I was their one-to-one sitter, is what we called it. So I was hanging out with them in their room, just making sure they were safe. And this woman was talking to me about the mice running on the ceiling and this baby wrapped in plastic over here that we had to save and all of the stuff. And I was like, what? Like, if you drink alcohol every day and then you just stop, that's what happens to you? So, seeing so many disease processes like that, like,
Mhm.
oh, this is what heart disease looks like. This is what kidney failure looks like. This is what, XYZ, just really started another interest in learning more and how do I prevent that? Because I don't want to be on the patient side here because that's what I saw day in and day out. Um, so that helped me just kind of learn more about nutrition and experiment with different things in my life. And then looking back on my life, I did have a great childhood, but no matter if you have quote unquote perfect parents, which newsflash, there are no such things. I am not even one. Um, Life just, stuff happens
Mhm.
and your parents try their best. And every child in my family, even the sisters that are closest in age, would take a different perspective of things that happened to all of us at the same time.
Mhm.
So little traumas here and there over life. And then I'm glad that I got to join the military at such a young age, but I was like a baby and then just released into the wild. And so had a lot of not awesome things happen to me.
Mhm.
And it was when it all caught up with me in about December of 2022. Um, back up. In 2018, I started working at an infusion clinic, and that was a pretty good job that I liked. But I felt like I had gotten to kind of like the top of where I could get there. Um, I could have become a charge nurse, but that was a lot more like administrative kind of roles, and I didn't want to do that. I could have gone into management, but I was not wanting to tell anyone else what to do. And so I was like, I guess this is like I'm at my peak here. Like, what
Mhm.
am I going to do? So I did some soul searching and decided then that I wanted to work in the field of mental health. And this was right around 2020, 2021, I think. So I thought, I'm going to apply to grad school. And I got accepted and was going to start their program. But before, I thought, well, I better start working in the area of mental health and just make sure that that's what I want to do because I was going to go get my degree in psychiatric mental health nurse
Mhm.
practitioner. So I started working in mental health and then started working with adolescents and just realized how broken our healthcare system is. And I felt, which is my personality and my struggles with me trying to say, okay, God, you put me here.
Mhm.
Now, like, I can fix it and not allowing Him to lead me. So
Yeah.
I thought if I was just there all the time, like I could help these kids. I could help them. I could make sure they were safe because when I would go home and come back, I would hear stories of like how this one acted up and got restrained or did this or just all these different things. And I was like, when I was there, that didn't happen.
Mhm.
And not that I was a better nurse at all. This was my first job. So I was inexperienced in mental health. But it was, yeah, it took a toll on me. And when I interviewed for that job, I told them, as an emergency room nurse with adults, I have had to restrain adults, and that is something that is just extremely hard for me. And to do that for children would be very hard for me. And so I was like, I don't know like how often that happens here or how often we're expected to do that, but like I
Hmm.
might not be okay with this. Um, and the job that I took before I started there, it was just any random nurse in the ER's position to sit with like the psych hall or the
Hmm.
mental health patients. Now, keep in mind, this is after COVID. And
Hmm.
so mental health for kids just, I think, kind of plummeted, I think, for all of us. And it
Right.
became a thing that, like, we talk about now. Like,
Hmm.
the term mental health doesn't mean you're crazy or anything, it is a part of your whole body health and
Hmm.
wellness. So, my very first day, I got like hit by a patient, was like sworn at, like all this crazy stuff. A couple days in, we had a patient who I was trying to talk to, and based on her whole set of circumstances, just very erratic behavior, and she did not feel well, came and attacked me and like punched me 5 times in the head. And there was no follow up on that. It
Hmm.
was just like, "Are you okay?" Uh, Not really. But
Hmm.
um, so a lot of that happened, and a lot of overworking on my end to think that I could save the world.
Hmm.
And by December of 2022, my brain just broke. And I got diagnosed with post traumatic stress disorder. And here we go, saying Rebecca's inexperienced and sheltered lifestyle. So you hear about PTSD, and you
Hmm.
usually hear about it with combat veterans. And that,
Yeah.
oh, maybe it's the 4th of July and they heard fireworks go off and they're like, whoa, I'm back in Nam. What's happening?
Hmm.
I didn't really understand that, but that's all I knew about it.
Yeah.
Living that is a special kind of torture and not something I would wish on anybody.
Hmm.
So, what I know now, looking back at that, my brain had my frontal lobe, which is the part of your decision making and complex thinking, was basically offline. And my amygdala was just going, hey, let's fight and flight all the time.
Hmm.
You don't need to sleep because when you sleep, you wake up in a panic and you can't breathe.
Hmm.
Um, Lack of sleep, like you were just talking about, does a number on your body. And yeah, it did.
Yeah.
um, I would just be freaking out kind of all the time. I felt almost like intoxicated or something, just like, ooh, okay, I don't know who I am. I'm not sure what's going on, kind of thing. I would be driving down the road in the town that I've lived in for 20 years and just not even know where I was. Kind of like on Google Maps when you can pick up the little yellow guy and like drag him and
Hmm.
put him in front of a building. It would be like that. But I was just going from my house 5 miles down the road to the grocery store. And
Hmm.
I would be like, where am I? I had
Hmm.
to use GPS to get around everywhere. Um, I quit working because you cannot be a nurse with a brain that is not functioning, especially to that level. Um, and it was just horrible.
Hmm.
I sought out every kind of treatment that you can think of. I did like the obvious counseling. I tried medications. I tried supplements. I tried like just be grateful for your life. Like it could be worse. And I tried some stuff that I call woo woo. Like
Hmm.
I went and saw a lady that she was an acupuncturist and she does
Hmm.
theta healing, THETA. So basically, she kind of sat across from me and like felt my energy and would like say that she was combing through like my ancestral records and healing things that were there. I did all different kinds of therapies from just like EMDR, which is, I always forget what it stands for, eye desensitization movement reprocessing, I think. You kind of move your eyes back and forth while you're talking about different traumas, and that has been known to help with PTSD.
Interesting.
I did some psychotherapy, drama therapy, like where you go back to a horrible situation and reenact it like you are the 5-year-old that this
Mm,
horrible thing happened to, like just everything. And I did this for 2 years and just kind of felt like, I guess this is my story. I decided I wasn't going to go to grad school because first in the middle of that year working in mental health, I broke my right ankle very severely and I couldn't walk for like 6 months,
mm,
and that did a number on my mental health. And then I was going to go to grad school the year after, but then that's when my brain was broken. And so I was like, okay, I guess that's just not in the cards for me.
mm,
I guess God's plan is that, like, this is kind of my life. And I don't know, maybe I did something horrible to get this, or this is just my lot in life, or I don't know, this is how it's going to be from here on out. So, was living life very, very depressed, very, very high anxiety, either not sleeping at all or doing nothing but sleeping.
mhm,
And yeah, that's kind of how my life was for about 2 years and my health.
mm. So then what brought you to a place of healing after all that? I mean, I think I wrote down just now surviving versus thriving because you said that okay, maybe this is just my lot in life. Maybe this is just what God has for me, and like surrendering to the Lord's plan. He hasn't promised us a good life, so it's good to surrender to His plan. But also, He doesn't want bad things for His children. He
Hmm.
doesn't want us to just survive. He designed our bodies to thrive. So, what brought you out of that lonely place? That I say lonely because any dark place where you don't know the answer, it's isolating and lonely, and you just don't know
Oh,
what's
yeah.
next, and you can't fully communicate that to anybody
Hmm.
around you. So, what was next for you? How did you get out of that?
So God got me out of that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But so I went to a program that this will be a great plug for your military members. So veterans that have PTSD, there is a program through an organization called Boulder Crest, and it's called Warrior Path. And path is spelt PATHH, and I can't ever remember what it stands for, but the HH is helping heroes. And so it's meant for veterans with PTSD. They've also opened it up some to first responders as well because they realize that that community gets hit really hard. Um, so I had found out about that program through a local organization in Gig Harbor, Washington, which is a PTSD foundation. The name of it, they took the letters PTSD, and instead of post traumatic stress disorder, they called it permission to start dreaming.
Mm.
And just even that phrase, like hearing about this, I was like, whoa, like, yeah, I haven't been able to dream. I can't even like
Yeah.
survive
Right.
hardly. And to be quite honest, there was many days that I did not want to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So I found out about that organization. I applied for a Warrior Path class, and it was almost exactly 1 year ago that I went to that. And it just so happened to be at this campground in
Mm.
Port Orchard, Washington, which is very close to where I live. And so I got to go. I think there was 5 other women in my cohort, and it's all paid for through grants and everything that Boulder Crest and the Permission to Start Dreaming Foundation gets. And they have these all over the US. So the one I went to was in Washington, but I know they have them in like Colorado. I know there's some in Florida and probably everywhere if you just Google Warrior Path.
Mm-hmm.
While I was there, everyone shared their stories, and there was a couple females that shared stories very, very similar to mine. And it was the first time like that I heard someone else say something and felt that whole like, oh my gosh, me too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I am not so special that this horrible thing just happened to me. Like you experience this also. And so that was a big part of the trajectory. And then also while I was there, they fed us very
Mm-hmm.
low carb. And the purpose being that just kind of lowering your inflammation, lowering your blood sugar spikes and valleys and everything, and kind of evening you out all across the board is great. Plus, the food that they fed us was extremely nutritious. and also tasted really darn good. That was like probably one of the best parts of the whole thing, not having to figure out what to cook and just having ample good food to eat. So when I was there, I talked to like the main director guy, and we were talking about like podcasts and books to read, and he suggested a book called Brain Energy, which is by Dr. Christopher Palmer, and it talks about the field of metabolic psychiatry.
Hmm.
I had never even heard of this, and I was like, okay. So that I went through that program in like May and June of 2024. I left that program feeling good, but then just kind of returned back home, same habits, same stuff, with a little bit of like a sprinkling of hope of like, nope, there's more. Like you just have to meditate more or do something else more. And my younger son got married in August. And so a bunch of my family members came, and one of my sisters started talking about metabolic psychiatry. And I was like, wait a second, I've heard of this before. What is this? So I started Googling it. And back to my interest and passion in nutrition, I would so much rather never have to take a medication, but change some part of my lifestyle and or diet and get healed that
Mm-hmm.
way. So I started diving into that. I found a local counselor to Washington State. She's kind of far from me, but we have done telehealth. And her website is called Mental Health Keto. And she does the ketogenic diet as a metabolic therapy to decrease inflammation and help people heal their brains. And so I started working with her in September of 2024. And within 5 days, I was like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
something's shifting,
Yeah.
something's different about this. And then we kind of worked together and we ebbed and flowed in different things that I was doing. And by December, I was like, okay, I had that initial, like, wow, this is amazing feeling. And then that kind of went away.
Hmm.
But I was also still working at the urgent care, which was not my favorite place to work, although I did love working with your sister. So that was part of it. And we were trying to figure out, is this depression? Is this
Mm-hmm.
just dissatisfaction with different parts of my life or what? And then I had been on a medication that was not for psychiatric things, but I was using it to help with my psychiatric symptoms. And so she said a lot of times people have to adjust their meds once they're on a keto diet. So she said, you should talk to your doctor that prescribed that and see if you can get off of it. And I did. And then in January, I told her, I'm afraid to say this like out loud because I feel like someone's going to steal it from me. But I've had depression for like 24 years and I think it's gone. And
Hmm.
she was like, yep. And
Yeah.
then ever since then, it's just like every day I wake up and I am like, how could I not see this before?
Mm.
Um, I could not see the beauty in life when I was deep in the struggle of PTSD. I could not like practice real gratitude because I was like, yeah, I mean, I have a house to live in. Okay, cool. I'm alive. Sometimes I wish I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just couldn't feel that. And now I am like, oh my gosh, there's only 24 hours in the day. Why can't we have like 72 hours in the day? There's so much that I want to do and so much beauty that I want to see and so many people I want to talk to. And it is just amazing. And I wish that I could just wave a magic wand and heal anyone that has ever felt like that. But I also wish that I could like create some sort of virtual reality game because if you could like truly taste and feel how I felt a year ago, less than a year ago, and how I feel now, it is it's amazing. Like you would
Mm-hmm.
be like, whatever that is, yeah, I'll have some of that, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it started with nutrition.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy hearing your story because when you run it back, it
Mhm.
sounds so simple. Like I, you'd think a story like this would have all these complicated, here's this protocol and this and this and this, but like it's you started eating real food. You eventually got off your medication. Uh, then paired with church and the strength of the Lord, things just worked as they were intended to work. And it's not some magic formula that's super crazy. It's just it's simple. And not to say
Mhm.
it's easy. Getting to that point clearly has taken a
Hmm.
long time. But now that we look back and you tell your story, the fix is not crazy. And I know that your church has been going through Exodus, and I want you to dive into that because once you told me about what your church was going through, it sparked just a lesson I had heard in Exodus about this exact same point that when the Israelites got to the Red Sea, and so they're encamped by the Red Sea, and they look back at all the Egyptians that are chasing after them, they're looking at their situation and they're like what the heck? Like, God, it would have been easier if we stayed back there in Egypt in slavery because now what do we do? Now we're
Hmm.
stuck and there's no way forward. And looking back as you continue reading the story in Exodus, the solution was easy. God was going to part the Red Sea for them. They just didn't know it yet. And so it's kind of the same for them. Like we can look back and wow, it's easy if you trust in the Lord and just obey one step at a time and live by his design, which is all like that's what we want to talk about on this
Hmm.
podcast, how we can take steps towards his original intent when it comes to everything, whether that's
Hmm.
food in this case, like our bodies were designed to function best when we're eating certain things. And looking back, simple. But looking ahead, sometimes you feel stuck. So I want you to talk about just what your takeaways were from Exodus.
Yeah. So I say that phrase all the time is it's simple, but it's not easy.
Hmm.
And especially in the way that our lives are today. Like back when people used to eat real food all the time, we didn't have like a grocery store with Doritos and Mountain Dew on the shelf.
Yeah, the
No
temptation.
one had ever tasted that.
Yeah.
But B, also our societies, like people farmed and
Yes. Yeah.
they hunted and they, grew all their own stuff and
Hmm.
canned and all of that thing. So now, like a typical nursing job is working a 12.5 hour shift 3 times a week, which it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that sounds so simple. It's only 3 days a week. Like you get 4 days off. But it's like 3 whole days. And if you
Yeah.
work even like a half an hour from where you live, there's no time to exercise. There's no time to hang out with your family. There's no time to do laundry. Like
Mm.
12.5 hour shift,
Yeah.
which by the way, before my brain broke, we were very short staffed, and all of the incentives with COVID, you would get rewarded not only financially, but you would get like a little like, yay, 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 Rebecca's picked up extra today. And so it was common to work 16-hour shifts back to back with not enough rest in
Jeez.
between
Wow.
because then you got paid more. So great on the pocketbook, not great for the mental health
Yeah.
or your heart or your life in
Yeah.
general.
Physical health. I mean, all of
Yes,
it.
everything. Um, and so we just finished the series on Exodus and so many takeaways. One was one of the like catchphrases that our pastor said was, God will not lead you to the wilderness without leading you through the wilderness. And um, that was like, oh yeah, like I don't think it was, I mean, I don't know. Things happen in life. And I think sometimes we use that platitude of like everything happens for a reason or God only gives you what you can handle. Okay. In your sister's circumstance, as her mom or big sister, I would be
Mhm.
like, okay, God, why did you give my child cancer? Like, this
Mhm.
is not okay. So those are not okay. Those words of comfort that we try to use. But also, when we look at things, we might think like, why did this have to happen this way? And sometimes you can see like goodness that comes from it. Like your sister knew right away, I want to be a
Mhm.
nurse. And then look how she is a nurse and she's an amazing nurse. So you could say, oh, well, maybe that's why. Like we try to play the author of Choose Your Own Adventure. And part of it is because we're making the decisions. And
Mhm.
I think that is also a part of my struggle is every decision I made in my nursing career. I was like, well, I guess God led me here. Like they interviewed me and they chose me. So I must work here.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then was like, oh, no. I think that emergency department in the mental health area was not really in God's plan. I think he had started whispering to me and being like, hey, Rebecca, this isn't where I want you to be. And I was like, what? Can't hear you. Too loud over here. This is what I'm doing and
Yeah.
I like it. And then it got to the situation where a lot of things happened and the work environment just was not good. And it was basically like God took the volume dial and was like, "Whoop, can you hear me now?" And I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay. And that is what got me out of that environment. Now, whether that is true or not, or just my human perception, because my brain is not God's brain, it makes sense to me now, but in the time, it did not make sense to me at
Hmm.
all. So, also thinking about Exodus, thinking about like in Washington, the area that I live in, if you look at us on the map, it almost looks like a piece of cauliflower that you cut down because there is just like highways and byways of water everywhere. You feel like you're on an island, but it's actually a little part of a peninsula, and then there are a lot of islands. So we have water everywhere. And tonight I will go to a gathering that our church has that my son is the worship leader for. And it's in this restaurant, actually upstairs in their bar, but it faces the water and we look across and we get to see the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. And I've been thinking about Exodus, like, okay, if there's an army coming after me and I come up to this, like, I
Hmm.
guess, I mean, I can swim, but I'm not that great of a swimmer and it's really going to be freaking cold water.
Yeah.
But to just even imagine, like, whoop, God just made a way where there was no way. Like, how
Yeah.
freaking cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we read that now, like however many years later, and we're like, Israelites, like you
Yeah.
walked
Come on.
through the Red Sea and you could not be like, oh, I trust you, God.
Yeah.
But then, oh, Rebecca, how many times in your life? I mean, every day I wake up, I have breath in my lungs, I have
Yeah.
food on my table. Like, thank you, Jesus. But then
Hmm.
tomorrow I'm like, "Ugh, but this happened, probably doesn't even care about me, doesn't even remember that I'm here. Hey.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it is so like just uh we can
Yeah.
see it in other people, but we can't see it in ourselves.
Yeah.
And I don't remember because I wrote that thing that I sent to you a while ago, but if you have anything that sticks out, I'll tell you about it.
Well, it's
Jog my
interesting.
memory.
As you were talking, just, well, okay. The word is so important because it's living and active and it speaks to us in new ways every day. We could read the same passage over and over, get
Hmm.
different things out of it. But if we're living life at a pace that doesn't allow us to sit and meditate on the word and to be in fellowship with other believers and to listen to people's stories, like I hope that this podcast can do for people,
Hmm.
if we don't make time for that, if our jobs don't allow for time for that, then everything is going to be messed up. Not only
Hmm.
is our physical health going to be horrible because we're working hours that just don't work for
Right.
sleep and don't allow for you to cook your own meals, and like for living life at a pace that doesn't allow for physical health or mental health, it also isn't a pace that works well for spiritual health. And
Hmm.
I think that I just love how all this ties together because when our bodies are functioning well, when we're in that place where we can thrive versus just survive, all three are connected because our time allows us to eat well, exercise. Our mental health is good because we're spending time with friends and family. And then our spiritual health is good because we have time to sit in God's word and remember because
Hmm.
God has done so much in my own life that I forget sometimes as kind of bullet points that I have to look back on when I'm facing a Red Sea moment where I'm like, oh God,
Hmm.
how am I going to get through this? I can look back on my own life. But I can also, like, there's a lot of pages in this thing that we can look at and read as reminders of God's faithfulness. And if we don't make time for
Hmm.
that, then our spiritual health is going to be in the dumps. And then it's all tied together. And so
Yes.
do you have any more nuggets of wisdom on that? Like how you've seen the dots connected between your physical, mental, and spiritual healing?
Yes. So I think it's really easy for all of us when we're on the mountaintops of life and like everything is good and we see the sunrise and we're like, oh yeah, God is good. Thank you. And then we go in the valley and we are like, clearly he has forgotten about me. In the mountaintop moments of life, it's very easy to praise God and be like, oh yeah, life is good. God is good all the time. Sure, when you're on the mountaintop, but in the
Hmm.
valley, how many people are like, God is good all the time, even when my life is horrible, and looking for blessings and ways that He is showing up. But this, I mean, I've had mountaintops and valleys throughout my life many times. Both of my parents are no longer living. My dad died really tragically, and that was like the first big loss of my life. And then my mom died a 2 year slow, kind of agonizing death. And there was a whole lot of emotion and all kinds of stuff with that. So those are just two things,
Mm-hmm.
two valleys, I guess, that I've been through. Lots of mountaintops. I mean, I have great, wonderful, amazing children who are beautiful and healthy. My husband is the most amazing man that I have ever met, both just patient with me throughout all of my struggles, my times with PTSD where he did not ever try to fix me, did not become overbearing or just say, like, lady, you are no fun to live with. I am out of here. He just stood by me. So, yeah, ebbs and flows of life, the waves. But I think now, going through all that I have experienced, I am able to look back and see that when we are in those valley moments and we have struggles, my struggles are not going to be the same as yours.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when we read like about the Israelites, like we're like, this does not pertain to us. Like this is so long ago that our lives are not like this. It's hard to identify.
Mm-hmm.
But when we can sit like this and talk with a person or podcast or talk to a friend, read a book that, happened a little bit
Mm-hmm.
sooner. And I'm not saying don't read the Bible at all. Don't
Yeah.
get that takeaway. But I think once I have experienced a certain flavor of pain
Mm-hmm.
and I am talking to you and you've also experienced a similar flavor of that pain,
Mm-hmm.
but you didn't know that somebody else had, that
Mm-hmm.
where we come out of that isolation and we form community and we were created to help support one another. And that,
Mm-hmm.
like, what are the first two commandments in the Bible, or the only commands that God really gives us, is to love him and love each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was telling your sister, it's kind of like if you were just like dropped down from a UFO and you had never heard of chocolate or ever tasted chocolate. How do you describe it? Like, it's a flavor, it's sweet, it's chocolatey. Like, but once you've tasted chocolate, like you could taste chocolate ice cream or you could taste chocolate cake or a
Yeah.
chocolate whatever and kind of know like, oh, this is chocolate. Yeah, it's gonna taste
Uh-huh.
chocolate. So if you say, my sister had blood cancer, and I say, my mom had blood cancer, like that is
Mm-hmm.
horrible.
Yeah.
We can share in that flavor. Now,
Yeah.
nobody wants that flavor in their
No.
life, but that is where I think it kind of like God uses our struggles to help
Mm-hmm.
us support one another.
Yeah.
And I think that while you're in that struggle, it's very, very isolating and you feel like no one understands. But I think if we all look back on our life, we should be able to see, like, I was either able to connect with someone or help someone else in their struggle because I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a super empathetic person. Like, I hate the phrase when people say, oh, I can't imagine, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you can't imagine? Because I can imagine. I
Just
can
try.
imagine
Yeah.
everything. But I think we say that phrase, but what we mean is, I don't want to imagine. Like, I
Mm.
don't want to imagine what it would be like to lose my house or my spouse or be financially,
Huh.
broken and bankrupt. And so, again, I think God just, his intent was not for us to struggle at all. His intent was for us to live in the Garden of Eden and be like, woohoo, partying all day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then this is our life, and we were created in his image by him to love and support one another and
Yeah.
be the
Wow.
hands and feet of Jesus and be like, I see you in your struggle
Yeah.
and it's real.
Hmm.
And I cannot save you, but I know who can.
Hmm. That comment that you made was almost, it was a stab in the chest because it was convicting in a good way where you said, when we say I can't imagine, we mean I don't want to imagine, because I've always admitted that like one of my weakest strengths is empathy, and that just kind of, oh, it hit it right where it needed to be hit because that's
Sorry, wasn't trying to hit you.
no, and it was good, and it was good in the sense that it'll grow me, which growth isn't
Mhm,
always easy, but seriously, I think sometimes I don't take the time to imagine. I don't wanna put in the effort to
mhm.
imagine. You can fill in the blank, like, I don't yeah, that another
You
pause
don't like
moment.
discomfort,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Um, I also hate when we, in our busy lifestyles, we say, "Hi, how are ya?" And then we just keep
Mm,
going.
yeah.
And so you might be horrible, but I don't have time for that. So we don't really mean, "How are you?" So I would love to change the whole way of the world, and we don't say that anymore. We say, "Hi, Erin. It's nice to see you."
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
how great is that? And even if
Mhm.
I am rushing past you, it's still nice to see you.
Man, and just using someone's name too, sometimes I
Mhm,
don't take the time and effort to learn someone's name, and I've known them at church for months, and I still don't know their name, but
mhm.
how seen do I feel when someone says my name? Very. So, convicting in all the best ways, Rebecca. You're bringing the heat today. Okay, I have one final question for you. It's the way that
Yeah.
we end off our podcast with all of our guests, but um, our title is Mind Your Mission because we want people to stay on track, to be reminded of all these truths that you're bringing, just to reevaluate where they're at in life and whether they're taking steps because everyone's taking steps somewhere, whether
Mhm.
you're taking steps towards God's design and what He says is good for you, or whether you're stepping away. So, what is one decision that women can make today to mind their mission when it comes to their personal health?
Yes. So, um, being a woman myself and raised in a family with almost all women, that I don't know, it hits differently.
Mhm,
And I think the way that our culture and society is so much focused on getting women distracted. I really think that
mm,
that is a
yeah.
big part of um, the devil, the enemies, like,
Mhm,
let's just mess with them and keep their brain stuck here, and then they will never get to where they're supposed to be.
mhm,
So we see all the things, whether it's on social media, whether it's on a magazine cover, a TV show, whatever, of here is the quote unquote perfect woman. This is what you're supposed to be, a Pinterest mom,
mhm,
whatever. Have it all together, do it all, and you are the one doing everything.
mm,
Um, I think our church right now is doing a series called Chosen. And today we actually got to do something so cool. So they're sponsoring children, and instead of you seeing a picture of a child like in Africa and choosing them, they took pictures of us. And
mhm,
there's going to be a team that goes to Africa, and these children who don't get to make choices get to choose who they want to be their like sponsor family.
mm,
But the whole message is how God chose us. And I think as women, when we look at all these things, Pinterest, social media,
mhm.
magazines, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
we think, I don't measure up. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I didn't earn the right to talk. I did not complete my education well, or I didn't go on the path of whatever. I messed it up. And I think if we can just remember what God says about us
Mhm,
and who he says we are, that is like
mhm.
another mind-blowing
Yeah.
mic drop moment. God created each one of us in his image, and he created us on purpose with a purpose.
Mhm,
And just knowing that, like, God is for you. It does not matter who is against you. It does not matter what someone says about you or what someone thinks about you. The God, the creator of the universe that created the stars and the mountains and the oceans and every animal and this beautiful nature, like what I'm sitting in my yard, he looked at the world and he thought, you know what? The world needs one of you too.
mhm,
So the world needs an Aaron. The world
mhm.
needs a Rebecca. The world needs insert your name.
Yeah.
And he made you. He knew
Mhm.
you before your mom even knew that you were alive in her. He
Yeah.
knows the numbers of hairs on your head. And then what is that phrase about? Like, he created the birds to be so beautiful and like they
Mhm,
don't worry, so we shouldn't
mhm.
worry either. Um, And then one of the verses, I'll pull this up real quick because we talked about this today, and I was like, oh, yeah, 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 is John 15, verse uh, 15 and 16. I no longer call you slaves because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends since I have told you everything the Father told me. You didn't choose me. This is Jesus speaking to us. I chose you. I appointed you to go and produce lasting fruit so that the Father will give you whatever you ask for using my name. This is my command. Love each other. And
Mhm.
then in verse 18, he says, if the world hates you, remember that it hated me first. And that hit hard because I've had many moments where I felt like people didn't like me or I didn't earn their approval. And God has been there too. And he
Mhm.
understands everything
Yeah.
that we're going through. So,
Okay, mic drop for like the 10th, 100th time. Like,
I need
oh,
a new microphone, Aaron.
yeah. I hope that everybody brought their journal and their pen today and we're writing things down. Um, I sure was. My piece of paper here is like full. um, so thank you, Rebecca, for just sharing not only your own story, but also part of God's story and His Word, and just things that He has been teaching you, because now He's teaching all of us too. I am going to get links from you for a few of the things you mentioned, a few
Yeah.
of the books and the resources, just to link down below for our listeners if they're interested. But thank you so much for joining us. You have been super encouraging to me, and I know our listeners will appreciate it as well. With
It's my
that,
pleasure.
thank you all, everyone, for listening. This has been Erin and Rebecca helping you mind your mission.